We're talking about this teacher, this Stacy DeMar, drama teacher, suing in federal court against Evanston Skokie School District 65. Max Eden writing for RealClearPolicy.com. He's over at the American Enterprise Institute. Anybody who tries to peddle that the line that CRT is just talking about racism is either gaslighting or being gaslit themselves. And anyone who maintains that CRT is simply an academic theory discussed in law school, at best, is ignorant of what CRT really is, like your former colleague Clarence Page.
It sounds like he was referring to Clarence, yeah.
He certainly fits that description, unfortunately, and I like Clarence, but
me too.
He's wrong on critical race theory. Max Eden goes on to say, by contrast, parent intuitions about CRT are spot on. Given CRT informs so many aspects of education policy and pedagogy, the real crux of the issue for parents is, as Andrew Sullivan adroitly put it, the issue is not teaching about critical race theory. It is teaching in critical race theory. Right? About is an academic exercise. In is indoctrination. That's pretty simple and effective way to put it. Let me give you an example of that, of both of the gaslighting or having been gaslit on critical race theory. A perfect case study is Joy Reid, who is one of these fungible MSNBC hosts. She had Chris Rufo on the show recently. He's a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. We've had him on the show, who has really taken the point on fighting critical race theory academically and politically. And he's not shy about saying that it's in part political. And this is how Joy Reid tried to go at him and say, this is just you advancing, conservative electoral political interests or some such thing. No, it's just him being shrewd in terms of the strategy to defeat what Andrew Sullivan referenced, to defeat what the left is doing in the schools. So Reid starts with word games, and she and Rufo have a little back and forth on that, to the extent that he was allowed to get a word in edgewise.
Well, I'll say two things. First of all, it's very interesting to me that so many people are now running away from the race of the label of critical race theory.
But he's not a critical race theorist.
Hold on. I'm going to quote two critical race theorists. Barbara Applebaum with the book Being Good, Being White. She says, quote, all white people are racist. Robin DiAngelo, who's another critical whiteness studies scholar, says that, quote, all white identity is inherently racist. So what you're doing is you're playing a series of word games. You know that critical whiteness studies is a subfield of critical race theory?
No, it's not.
These things are all deeply interrelated.
No, they're not.
And I'm not going to let you play word games. And this is really, I think, the most essential thing.
Hold on. No.
Let me respond at least once. I haven't gotten a full sentence out.
Mm-hmm. No, they're not. No, they're not. Not a Robin DiAngelo, who's got a bestseller on her hands, White Fragility, and is being paid tens of thousands of dollars at corporate retreats and bull jive sessions to advance whatever's called critical race theory, whatever her version of critical race theory is.
I had to go through that crap at the Tribune.
Right. I mean, this idea, like, she's not a critical race theorist. Joy Reid wants, this is so esoteric. This is so deep. This is 400 level at a law school. It's, first of all, it's not. And secondly, because critical race theory has been so branded in a multitude of directions, you have a lot of people terming themselves critical race theorists. Whether you describe them as such or not, it's the same deal. It's teaching in, not teaching about.
Understand this. They didn't like the word liberal, so they changed it to progressive. They don't like the idea that they're all about defunding the police. So now they're saying, as I write today in johncastnews.com, that they're all about reimagining the police. It's the same thing. They want to cover their behinds. And right here, Dan Proft just explained it. They're not critical race theories. Whatever they say they are, they're walking back on that, not on the idea, but on the terminology, on the branding.
Well, right, and with respect to defund the police now it's come 180 degrees. Now it's Republicans who tried to defund police. That's the new line.
Psaki,
and as Max Eden wrote about, Chris Rufo said in his exchange, when he was again allowed to eke out a few sentences, parents know what's happening, and frankly, Joy Reid knows that too, which is why she's trying to delegitimize Chris Rufo.
Right.
What I don't think is right is that forcing 8-year-olds in Cupertino, California, to deconstruct their racial identities and then rank themselves according to power and privilege. It's intersectionality theory, which was invented by Kimberly Crenshaw.
That's a separate thing.
Which is part
Intersectionality
of
is a
critical
separate
race
thing.
theory.
No, it's not, dear.
You had her on your show. You know this.
Yeah, she invented
here's
both
the bottom
things.
line, Joy.
She invented
what you've
both
done
things.
in tonight's segment is exactly what I'm fighting against. I'm fighting against the manipulation of language. I'm fighting against language
You're fighting against wokeness, and you don't like corporate wokeness, etc. I get it.
Euphemistic terms with subversive content. Because otherwise, you just say whatever you want, and then you back away from it, and you dance around it. It's not going to happen. Parents all over this country, they know what's happening in schools. They know what's happening in their public institutions. And you're seeing people revolt against this divisive identity politics. And you can dance all you want, but you're not going to stop people from understanding what's happening in their classrooms.
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Peter Wood. He's the president of the National Association of Scholars. Peter, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Morning. It seems per a recent piece you wrote for The Spectator that you're seeing the same thing Chris Rufo is saying, that we are saying, which is parents' intuition are intuitively getting what's happening, and they're not liking it, and they shouldn't be liking it. They're getting it right.
Parents are certainly getting it right. I guess what happened is that a year of being at home while their kids were being instructed on Zoom, they saw firsthand what was going on. The critical race theory and its associated brands are everywhere, and they basically come down to the idea that America is an inherently racist society, that everything we do, everything we've been, is rooted in the oppression of black people and the privileging of white people. Now, you could call that by a dozen different names, but it's the same thing no matter what name you put on it. And Chris Rufo is spectacular on this. He has got right to the heart of it, and people like Joy Reid are quite nervous about his success. But they should be more than nervous about his success. This has spread into school board meetings from coast to coast. When I was writing that article for The Spectator, my hands were full of examples. I went through about 30 states, and in every state there were multiple instances of school boards rising up, or parents rising up at school board meetings saying enough is enough. They're running into the obstacle that our school boards are basically dominated by people who are elected with the support of the teachers unions, and the teachers unions are one of the seedbeds of critical race theory. They've been to these schools of education that don't really teach anything about education. They just teach how to propagandize kids for social justice and racial justice and the sort of alphabet soup of justices now, anything other than real justice.
Well, and to your point, and by the way, there's another good case study. I just want to make sure we're of Loyola Academy and Wilmette here, where parents have really taken up the fight, and donors, like big donors, have gotten involved too, saying we're not donating to the school anymore, and that matters for a private Catholic school like Loyola. So that fight continues because the administration is recalcitrant to acknowledge what parents have now unearthed. Because they've, and this happens in private schools too. I don't just want to focus on teachers unions, because in the private schools like Loyola Academy and Wilmette on the North Shore of the city, a wealthy area, they lost their staff. They lost the teachers. They hired a bunch of social justice Catholic teachers or non-Catholics, but social justice warriors, Catholic or not Catholic, and they lost control of their school. So now the administrators are in a pickle. We don't have control of our teachers and administrators, and we're losing control of our parents who don't like what our teachers and administrators are doing. So now what do we do?
Well, I'm afraid the only real answer to that is to start over. You cannot have a decent curriculum well taught by a bunch of people who are ideologues who are dedicated to tearing down the country. That's what we've got.
Mr. Wood, this is John Cass. I wonder, I'm fully in support of what you and Rufo and others are saying about critical race theory in the schools, but to your point about starting over, is it worth it for parents and for their communities to engage in this long-term fight with basically the the teachers' unions, the Democrats, and their allies in the media? Or is it perhaps better to push national school choice and start over in their own communities the way they want?
Well, I favor school choice, and I favor federal measures that would make that possible. But I think this is one of these wars where you have to be ready to fight on a number of fronts. And just giving up on the schools is not a good idea. A lot of families have no choice but to attend to the public schools. People who want very high quality education sometimes need to turn to the Catholic schools, other private schools. And I think both things are the answer. It's not simply a choice between one and the other. In the long term, we need school choice, but in the immediate deal, we've got to go against what has happened to our public schools. They've been taken over.
And you have to go talk to your kids' teachers too, and principals, and I mean, and school board, but at all fronts, like you say. I note, because this one of the talking points that we discussed at the outset here, that this isn't really happening. Really, the Zinn Education Project, Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn, who wrote, for those who know, People's History of the United States about 40 years ago, which has been a staple of government schools history courses in the intervening 4 decades. By the way, a great book, Debunking Howard Zinn by Mary Graber, if people want to pick that up, or make sure their kid reads it if he's being forced to read Howard Zinn. But the Zinn Education Project, more than 5,000 teachers pledged to teach the truth despite new state bills against it. That is a statement in support of critical race theory instruction in the schools, and the Zinn Project has got 5,000 teachers. I'm sure they can get tens of thousands of more, but this just speaks to the teacher as activist infrastructure that is built around K through 12 school systems.
Right. The Zinn Project is hand in glove with the 1619 Project, the New York Times' effort to promote a version of critical race theory. The Zinn Project was one of the first to endorse the 1619 Project. Yes, the teachers, a large number of them have been radicalized, and they are determined to thwart the public will as far as teaching real American history, real American civics. This is a battle that's occurring in state legislatures. Illinois, I'm afraid, has already thrown in the towel. So you're going to have to undo legislation that's already been passed.
He is Peter Wood, President of the National Association of Scholars. Peter, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And he joined us at the turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper.